I never thought a perfect smile could be a warning sign. But in Alpine Grove, where grins never fade and laughter echoes too loudly, I've learned to fear happiness. It started with a simple welcome to the neighborhood visit. As Sarah, our new neighbor, handed me a plate of cookies, she sliced her finger on the edge. Blood trickled down, staining the pristine welcome mat. Yet her smile never wavered, her eyes never blinked. That's when I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Something was terribly wrong in this picture-perfect community, and I was about to uncover just how deep the cracks in this facade really went. The decision to move to Alpine Grove seemed perfect at the time. Jamie, my wife, had landed a job at the local tech startup, and I could easily continue my freelance writing from anywhere. Our daughter, Zoe, was initially reluctant to leave her friends behind, but the promise of a fresh start in high school eventually won her over. Our first week in the community was a whirlwind of unpacking and meeting neighbors. Everyone seemed impossibly cheerful, always ready with a wave or a helping hand. At first, I chalked it up to small-town friendliness, a welcome change from the cold shoulders of city life. But as days turned into weeks, the constant cheer began to grate on me. It wasn't just Sarah with her bleeding finger and unwavering smile. It was Mr. Johnson mowing his lawn at 7 a.m. on a Sunday, whistling despite the noise complaints. It was Mrs. Peterson walking her dog, grinning widely even as it relieved itself on her shoes. "Don't you think it's a bit much?" I asked Jamie one evening, watching our neighbors through the kitchen window. They were having what looked like a heated argument, but their faces were plastered with smiles. Jamie shrugged, her own smile a bit too bright. "They're just friendly, Alex. Maybe you're not used to it. Give it time." But time only made things stranger. Zoe came home from school, her usual teenage sullenness replaced by an eerie cheerfulness. "Everyone's so nice here, Dad," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "They have these great classes on positive thinking. You should try them." I tried to shake off my unease, but it clung to me like a shadow. One afternoon, I was walking through the neighborhood when I saw Tom, our next-door neighbor, trip and fall hard on the sidewalk. I rushed to help him up, expecting to see pain or at least annoyance on his face. Instead, he looked at me with that same fixed smile, blood trickling from his scraped palms. "Wonderful day for a walk, isn't it, Alex?" he said, his voice unnaturally cheery. That's when I knew I had to dig deeper. Something was very wrong in Alpine Grove, hidden behind those perfect smiles and manicured lawns. And I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. My investigation into Alpine Grove's unsettling cheerfulness began with a deep dive into the town's history. The local library, a quaint building with an ever-smiling librarian, yielded little information at first. But buried in the archives, I found old newspaper clippings about the community's founder, Dr. Evelyn Foster. 20 years ago, Dr. Foster had established Alpine Grove as a revolutionary happiness community. The articles praised her vision of a stress-free society, but details were frustratingly vague. As I dug deeper, I uncovered whispers of a groundbreaking emotional regulation program, but specifics were conspicuously absent. My research was interrupted when Jamie returned from a neighborhood welcome seminar with an unnervingly wide smile. "You should really attend, Alex," she said, her voice oddly flat despite her cheerful expression. "It's enlightening." Alarm bells rang in my head. I made excuses, claiming deadlines and work commitments. Jamie's insistence grew stronger each day, her eyes taking on the same glassy sheen I'd noticed in our neighbors. Meanwhile, Zoe's behavior became increasingly concerning. She spent more time at school, attending those positive thinking classes she'd mentioned. When she was home, she spoke in platitudes about happiness and community spirit, her words sounding rehearsed and empty. One evening, I overheard a hushed conversation between our neighbors. Tom and Sarah were arguing in fierce whispers, their faces momentarily free from their perpetual smiles. "He's not adjusting," Sarah hissed. "Dr. Foster is getting concerned." Tom's reply chilled me to the bone. "Then we'll have to take more direct measures. For the good of the community." Their smiles snapped back into place the moment they noticed me, but it was too late. I'd seen behind the mask, and what I'd glimpsed terrified me. Desperate for answers, I decided to confront Tom. I cornered him in his garage, away from prying eyes. "What's really going on here, Tom?" I demanded. "What's happening to my family?" For a moment, genuine fear flashed across Tom's face. His smile cracked, revealing a man trapped behind his own facade. "You don't understand, Alex," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Once you start, you can't stop. The program, the drug, it's everywhere. In the water, the air. We're all part of it now." Before I could press further, Tom's smile reasserted itself, as if controlled by unseen strings. But I'd heard enough. There was only one place left to search for answers: the community center where it had all begun. Under the cover of night, I broke into the community center. In the basement, I discovered a hidden laboratory filled with vials of a strange, iridescent liquid. As I examined the drug that had enslaved an entire community, the lights suddenly flicked on. Dr. Evelyn Foster stood in the doorway, her smile as perfect as ever. "Curious, aren't we, Alex?" she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Our happiness program was meant to end suffering, to create a perfect society. But we didn't anticipate the side effects." Before I could react, Jamie and Zoe appeared behind her, their faces frozen in those terrifying smiles. "Join us, Dad," Zoe pleaded, her eyes vacant. "Be happy with us." Dr. Foster approached, a syringe in hand. "You have a choice, Alex. Embrace happiness willingly, or we'll ensure your compliance. After all, we can't have one unhappy person ruining our perfect community, can we?" Cornered in that sterile lab, my family's vacant smiles more terrifying than any threat, I faced an impossible choice. Dr. Foster's syringe glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights, promising artificial bliss or forced compliance. In that moment, I realized the true horror of Alpine Grove, the complete erasure of genuine human emotion. My mind raced, searching for an escape, a way to save my family and myself. But as Dr. Foster stepped closer, her smile never wavering, I wondered, was there really any way out? Or had Alpine Grove's frozen smiles already claimed us all, leaving only the illusion of choice? The stench crept in before the sounds. A nauseating odor that seeped through my apartment walls, as if something was rotting next door. I ignored it for days, blaming old pipes. But then, on a quiet night, I heard it. A dull thud, followed by a muffled groan from the adjacent apartment. Mr. Kaplan, my reclusive neighbor, smiled at me in the hallway the next morning. "Sleep well?" he asked, his yellow teeth contrasting with the smell of disinfectant on his hands. That's when I realized the stench wasn't what scared me. It was the silence that came after. I moved into Oakwood Apartments 3 months ago, fresh out of college and ready to start my new job at the local newspaper. The rent was cheap, the location decent, and I thought I'd hit the jackpot. That is, until the smell started. At first, I blamed it on the building's age. These old places always have their quirks, right? But as days turned into weeks, the odor grew stronger, more pungent. It was a mix of decay and something chemical, like rotting meat doused in bleach. My neighbor, Mr. Kaplan, was an enigma. A man in his late 60s, he kept odd hours and rarely left his apartment. When we did cross paths in the hallway, he'd give me that unsettling smile, his yellow teeth peeking out from behind chapped lips. "How are you settling in, Alex?" he'd ask, his voice raspy from years of smoking. I'd force a smile, trying not to breathe through my nose. "Fine, thanks." "Hey, have you noticed any strange smells lately?" He'd shrug, those bony shoulders rising and falling under his stained wife beater. "Can't say I have. Maybe it's coming from outside?" But it wasn't. I checked. I'd even called the building manager, a surly man named Frank, who brushed off my concerns. "Listen, kid," Frank had said, his voice crackling over the phone, "we've got no reports of gas leaks or plumbing issues. Maybe you should lay off the late-night takeout, huh?" I hung up, frustrated and more than a little embarrassed. Was I going crazy? Was the stress of my new job getting to me? But then came the noises. Late at night, when the building settled into its creaky silence, I'd hear things. Scraping sounds, like something heavy being dragged across a floor. Muffled thuds. Once, I swore I heard a whimper. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Mr. Kaplan was a restless sleeper. Maybe he had a pet I didn't know about. But combined with the smell, it all felt wrong. One night, unable to sleep, I pressed my ear against the wall separating our apartments. The smell was strongest here, and I could feel a slight vibration, like something was humming on the other side. That's when I heard it. Clear as day, a voice not Mr. Kaplan's whispering, "Help me." That whispered plea for help haunted me. I spent the next few days and a daze, torn between my mounting suspicions and the fear of looking like a paranoid fool. The smell had become a constant companion, clinging to my clothes and hair. I'd catch whiffs of it at work, earning concerned looks from my colleagues. I started documenting everything. The times I heard noises, the intensity of the smell, Mr. Kaplan's comings and goings. It wasn't much, but it made me feel like I was doing something. One evening, I ran into Mrs. Patel from across the hall. She was a kindly widow in her 70s, always ready with a warm smile and a plate of homemade samosas. "Alex, dear," she said, her brow furrowed with concern, "you're looking pale. Is everything all right?" I hesitated, then decided to confide in her. As I described the smell and the noises, her expression changed from concern to something darker. "You know," she whispered, leaning in close, "Mr. Kaplan's last neighbor moved out rather suddenly. Nice young woman, about your age. I haven't seen her since." A chill ran down my spine. Did she say why she was leaving? Mrs. Patel shook her head. "That's just it. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. Left in the middle of the night, according to Frank. Very odd, if you ask me." That night, the noises from next door were louder than ever. I heard shuffling, then a loud thud followed by what sounded like muffled sobbing. My heart raced as I pressed my ear against the wall. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. "Is someone there? Do you need help?" Silence. Then, Mr. Kaplan's voice, unnervingly close. "Everything okay over there, Alex? Heard you talking to yourself." I jumped back from the wall, my pulse pounding. I thought I heard something. A low chuckle. "Must be that imagination of yours again. Get some sleep, kid." But I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I called in sick to work and decided to do some digging. I spent hours online, searching for any information about missing persons in our area. That's when I found a Facebook post from 6 months ago. A woman named Lily Chen, last seen in our neighborhood. The photo showed a smiling young woman standing in front of a familiar building or apartment complex. My hands shook as I dialed 911. I blurted out everything to the dispatcher: the smell, the noises, the missing woman. They said they'd send someone to check it out. An hour later, 2 officers knocked on my door. They listened patiently, then asked to speak with Mr. Kaplan. I waited in the hallway, heart pounding, as they knocked on his door. No answer. One officer radioed for a warrant while the other tried to reassure me. That's when we heard a muffled scream from inside Mr. Kaplan's apartment, followed by a crash. The officers didn't hesitate. They kicked down the door, guns drawn. I peered inside, expecting to see a hostage situation or worse. Instead, I saw Mr. Kaplan on the floor, clutching his chest. And the source of the smell? A broken fermenting jar, its contents some kind of exotic cheese splattered across the room. The paramedics took Mr. Kaplan away, leaving me stunned in the hallway. The cops found no evidence of foul play, just an old man's weird hobby gone wrong. They assured me the screams were probably just him falling. But as I watched him leave, a chill ran down my spine. In the commotion, I glimpsed something in Mr. Kaplan's apartment, a familiar-looking bracelet on his cluttered table. It looked just like the one Lily Chen wore in her Facebook photo. The smell's gone now, but I can't shake this feeling. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear noises. And I wonder, what else might be hidden behind these thin walls? The first time I saw Mr. Garrett, our basement neighbor, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty hallway. His pale, gaunt face and piercing eyes made my skin crawl, but I brushed it off as new neighbor jitters. That was before Lily's toys started appearing outside his door. Before the whispers through the vents at night. Before I caught him watching my daughter through our kitchen window, his lips curled in an unsettling smile. I never imagined a simple hello could lead to such terror. Now, as I stand in his apartment, surrounded by hundreds of photos of Lily, I realize how wrong I was. The moment I laid eyes on Mr. Garrett, something felt off. His pale, gaunt face and sunken eyes made him look like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. He stood there, clutching Lily's teddy bear as if it were his own prized possession. "I believe this belongs to your little one," he said, his voice raspy and low. "I found it in the hallway and thought I'd keep it safe." I forced a smile, trying to hide my unease. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Lily will be so relieved." As I reached for the bear, his grip tightened ever so slightly before he finally let go. Our fingers brushed, and I had to suppress a shudder at how cold and clammy his skin felt. "She's such a delightful child," he mused, his gaze drifting past me towards our apartment door. "I hear her laughter sometimes. It brightens my day." I nodded awkwardly, eager to end the conversation. "Well, thanks again. Have a good day." As I turned to leave, I could feel his eyes boring into my back. I hurried into our apartment, locking the door behind me. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "Mommy," she whispered, hugging her bear tight, "I don't like the man downstairs. He watches me." I tried to reassure her, but her words sent a chill through me. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. Little things at first: a toy car in the hallway, a hair ribbon on the stairs leading to the basement. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Lily was just careless with her things. But then I began to feel watched. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye, only to turn and see nothing. The feeling was strongest when I was in the kitchen, which shared a wall with Mr. Garrett's apartment. One evening, while doing dishes, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the other side of the wall. I pressed my ear against it, holding my breath. The scratching stopped, replaced by what sounded like whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone sent shivers down my spine. I pulled away from the wall, my heart pounding. That's when I noticed a small hole near the baseboard, barely visible unless you were looking for it. As I bent down to examine it, a sudden movement on the other side made me jump back. The next morning, I confided in my best friend, Zoe, over coffee. "Am I losing it?" I asked, rubbing my temples. "Maybe the stress of single motherhood is getting to me." Zoe's brow furrowed. "Trust your gut, Amelia. This doesn't sound right. Have you talked to the landlord?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I don't want to seem like a hysterical tenant." "Screw that," Zoe said firmly. "Your safety comes first. Tell the landlord, and maybe set up a camera in your apartment." Taking your advice, I spoke to Mr. Patel, our building manager. He listened politely but seemed dismissive. "Mr. Garrett's been here for years," he said. "Quiet tenant, always pays on time. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." Frustrated but determined, I ordered a small security camera online. The day it arrived, I set it up facing our front door. As the weeks passed, the incidents escalated. Lily started having nightmares, waking up screaming about the shadow man watching her. I'd find her toys rearranged in the morning, despite being sure I'd put them away the night before. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the building's basement when I noticed a crumpled paper under one of the machines. Curious, I picked it up. My blood ran cold. It was a crayon drawing of a little girl with blonde pigtails, unmistakably Lily holding hands with a tall, dark figure. In the corner, in childish scrawl, it read, "Me and Daddy." Handshaking, I shoved the drawing into my pocket and rushed upstairs. That night, after Lily was asleep, I checked the security camera footage. My heart nearly stopped when I saw Mr. Garrett standing outside our door at 2 a.m., just listening. The next day, I noticed our spare key was missing from its hiding spot. Panic rising, I called Zoe. I need to get into his apartment, I said, my voice trembling. I need to know what's going on. Zoe hesitated. Amelia, that's breaking and entering. It's dangerous. I don't care, I said firmly. This is about Lily's safety. Can you watch her tomorrow while I'm at work? She agreed reluctantly. The next morning, I waited until Mr. Garrett left for his job at the local library. With a borrowed master key from our maintenance man who thought I'd locked myself out, I stood before the basement door, heart pounding. The musty air hit me as I entered Mr. Garrett's apartment. My flashlight beam revealed walls covered with photos, all of Lily. At the park, in front of her school, even sleeping through our bedroom window. My stomach churned. A door stood ajar at the back of the living room. Pushing it open, I gasped in horror. The room was a perfect replica of Lily's bedroom, complete with a small bed and familiar toys. A journal lay open on a desk. I picked it up, reading the last entry. Soon, my darling Lily will be home where she belongs. With her real father. Suddenly, I heard the front door open. Mr. Garrett's voice called out, Lily? Daddy's home. Panic gripped me as I realized with sickening clarity he wasn't just obsessed with my daughter. He truly believed she was his. I managed to escape that day, grabbing Lily from Zoe's and driving nonstop to my sister's house 3 states away. We never returned to that apartment. The police investigation turned up chilling evidence, but Mr. Garrett vanished without a trace. Sometimes, I still wake up in a cold sweat, wondering if he's out there, searching for us. And on quiet nights, when I check on Lily sleeping, I can't shake the feeling that someone else might be watching her too. Just yesterday, I could have sworn I saw a familiar figure standing across the street, but when I blinked, he was gone.
Like the story? Hit like and subscribe. See you in the next story popping up on your screen at this exact moment.